Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be really diving deep into this whole idea of good jobs. Not just what they are, but how companies can actually create these workplaces that are good for everybody. Shareholders, customers, and employees.
Yeah.
We're going to be using Zeynep Ton's book, The Case for Good Jobs, as our guide for this one.
Great book.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. Even the footnotes and the acknowledgments have some pretty interesting stuff in them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm really curious about this whole thing. Do you think prioritizing employees' well-being can actually boost a company's bottom line?
That's a great question.
Yeah. What about the real cost of high turnover? We're going to explore all these questions and more so stick with us.
What's so fascinating about this is it really challenges some of the basic assumptions we have about how businesses operate.
Yeah.
Ton starts by painting a kind of a grim picture. She cites studies showing that even before the pandemic hit,
right,
a lot of Americans were losing faith in the economic system.
Mm-hmm.
A significant number felt capitalism was doing more harm than good.
It's a bit unsettling, right? Is this system inherently flawed? Yeah. Or can companies actually do better?
Yeah.
Especially when you consider trends like rising minimum wages and workers kind of demanding more from their employers.
That's exactly the question that Ton tackles in the book.
Right.
She doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
Yeah.
She even brings up the issue of deaths of despair.
Oh.
Deaths related to, drugs, alcohol, and suicide, which economists have linked to economic hardship.
That's some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, are companies paying attention to these broader societal trends?
Mm-hmm.
Are they connecting the dots between employee well-being and the overall health of our economy?
Some are, some aren't. Ton argues that a lot of companies are stuck in what she calls a vicious cycle of low pay.
Uh-huh.
They think they're saving money by keeping wages low, but it actually ends up hurting them in the long run.
Okay, let's unpack this vicious cycle a little bit.
Yeah.
Ton uses the story of a Starbucks employee, Miss Navarro, to illustrate this point.
Mm-hmm.
She was a single mom, juggling these unpredictable schedules and low wages, barely making ends meet.
Right.
Can you relate to that feeling at all of constantly being on edge, wondering if you'll have enough hours to pay the bills?
I think that's a scenario that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And think about the impact that has on someone's work.
Right.
When you're stressed about finances, it's hard to be fully present and focused on your job.
Totally. It's how can you be expected to deliver amazing customer service?
Right.
When you're worried about whether you can even put food on the table.
Exactly. And it's not just anecdotal, Ton highlights studies
Oh, wow.
that show how financial insecurity can impact worker performance.
Right.
And even safety.
Mm-hmm.
For example, research on certified nursing aides found that those facing financial stress were less likely to notice threats to their patient safety.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
It really underscores that connection between personal well-being
Mm-hmm.
and the quality of work that we do.
Yeah, there's similar research on truck drivers.
Right.
Those experiencing financial strain had higher accident rates.
Wow.
The implications for productivity and safety across industries are pretty significant.
It really makes you question those executives who suggest things like ski lift ticket discounts,
right,
as perks for minimum wage workers.
Yeah.
It just feels so out of touch with the reality of their employees' lives.
It's almost like they're trying to put a Band-Aid on a much deeper wound.
Right.
They're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
This brings us to another concept that Ton talks about, the operational vicious cycle.
Okay.
It's how companies get trapped in this cycle of mediocrity.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Think about a company that constantly cuts labor hours to meet these short-term budget targets.
Mm-hmm.
What often happens, they end up understaffed.
Right.
Customer service suffers.
Right.
And in the long run, sales decline.
Right.
They're sacrificing long-term success for these short-term gains.
Mm-hmm.
Home Depot, under CEO Robert Nardelli, is a classic example of this.
I vaguely remember that that era? Did things go downhill pretty fast?
They did.
Yeah.
Nardelli was all about cost cutting and expanding into these new markets.
Right.
But he neglected the core business,
Yeah.
taking care of customers and employees.
Right.
Customer service scores plummeted. And same-store sales growth took a nosedive.
So he was basically prioritizing profits over people.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And the consequences were pretty dire. Ton tells this story of Sarah, a new hire during that time.
Okay.
Her training was a mess. She didn't have the right equipment.
Oh, geez.
And she never received any feedback.
Right.
It was a recipe for frustration and disengagement.
It sounds like a system where mediocrity becomes the norm, which hurts everyone in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It raises an interesting question, though.
Okay.
If this low investment approach is so flawed, why do so many companies stick with it?
That's a really good question.
We'll delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, stay tuned for that.
It's fascinating, you know. Some companies can be profitable,
Right.
but still be missing out on this huge potential. They're so focused on the bottom line,
Right.
that they fail to see those hidden costs of mediocrity.
It's like they're driving with the parking brake on. Right. Just going through the motions, not really reaching their full speed.
Exactly. A prime example is Walmart back in 2014.
Okay.
They were this giant corporation, synonymous with low pay,
Right.
high turnover, and let's be honest, not the happiest customers.
Yeah.
Yet they were still raking in profits.
Okay, so they were making money,
Yeah.
but something clearly wasn't working.
Right.
What was the turning point for them? How did they even begin to address this?
Well, eventually their declining sales growth forced them to confront the reality of their low wage model.
Yeah.
They started to see that to truly satisfy customers, they needed to invest in their frontline employees.
Okay.
It wasn't just about cutting costs. It was about creating a better experience for everyone.
So it sounds like customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction really go hand in hand. It's not a zero-sum game where you have to pick one over the other.
Precisely. Companies that excel in customer service often prioritize their employees as well.
Okay.
Ton calls out what she refers to as corporate disabilities.
Corporate disabilities.
Yeah.
That's a powerful term.
It is.
What does that look like in practice? Can you give us some examples?
Imagine a call center.
Okay.
Where reps are evaluated solely on call duration.
Okay.
So they're incentivized to rush through calls.
Right.
Even if it means not fully addressing the customer's needs. Have you ever been on a call like that?
Ugh. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
You just left feeling frustrated and unheard.
Right. And I imagine it's just as demoralizing for the employee on the other end of the line.
Yeah, totally.
It creates this sense of disempowerment for both the employee and the customer. The employee isn't empowered to actually solve the problem.
Right.
And the customer is left feeling dissatisfied. Yeah.
It's a lose-lose situation.
Totally.
So if this low-wage, high-turnover model is so flawed,
right,
how do companies break free?
Yeah.
How do they create good jobs that benefit everyone involved?
That's the million-dollar question.
Ton proposes a good job system built on 4 key operational choices.
Okay. What are those?
Focus and simplify.
Okay.
Standardize and empower.
Right.
Cross-train and operate with slack.
Yep. Yeah.
She argues that these choices, when implemented effectively, can lead to better employee performance, reduced workload, and ultimately happier customers.
Those sound like pretty solid principles.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how they translate into real world action. Let's break them down one by one.
Okay.
What does it mean to focus and simplify?
It's about identifying what truly matters to customers.
Okay.
And eliminating anything that doesn't add value.
This could involve streamlining processes.
Right.
Reducing product variety or simplifying store layouts.
Yeah.
For example, Ton highlights Mercadona.
Okay.
A Spanish supermarket chain known for its disciplined approach to minimizing last-minute changes.
Okay.
Which reduces stress and confusion for employees.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about creating a more efficient and less overwhelming work environment for employees.
Right.
So they can focus on what matters most.
Exactly. The next principle,
Okay.
standardize and empower,
Right.
might seem a bit contradictory at first.
Yeah, I was just thinking that wouldn't some argue that standardized procedures can stifle creativity and make employees feel like robots?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But the key is in the empower part.
Okay.
Standardization is about creating clear and consistent procedures.
Right.
So everyone knows what's expected. But it's also about giving employees the autonomy to make decisions and solve problems without constantly needing approval from managers.
So it's about finding that balance between consistency and flexibility.
Right.
Give employees clear guidelines.
Yeah.
But also trusting them to use their judgment.
Exactly. And this leads us to cross-training.
Oh, yeah.
By training employees to perform multiple tasks, companies create more flexibility and resilience.
Right.
If someone calls out sick or there's a sudden rush, others can step in and help.
Yeah.
Without everything falling apart.
Right.
Ton gives the example of Mudbay, a pet supply retailer, where employees are trained to handle various tasks, from stocking shelves to assisting customers with expert advice.
So it sounds like cross-training not only makes the business more efficient, but it can also reduce boredom and increase employee engagement. It gives them a chance to learn new skills and broaden their expertise.
Absolutely. Now the last choice,
Okay.
operate with Slack,
Okay.
might seem counterintuitive in today's business environment
Yeah.
where everyone's obsessed with efficiency and doing more with less.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
It seems like most companies are trying to run as lean as possible.
Right.
How can having Slack actually benefit the business?
It might seem counterproductive, but Ton argues that having some built-in Slack, whether in staffing or time, allows for better customer service and reduces the pressure on employees.
Right.
It's about creating some breathing room.
Right.
So employees can handle unexpected situations without getting overwhelmed.
It makes sense. If you're constantly running at 110%, there's no room for error.
Right.
No time to think creatively and no opportunity to go above and beyond for customers.
Exactly. It's about building a system that can absorb shocks without sacrificing quality or customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
Think of it like having a cushion. When you're constantly stretched thin, even a small bump can send you flying.
Right.
But with a bit of cushion, you can handle those bumps with more grace and ease.
This all sounds great in theory, but I'm sure there's resistance to making these changes.
Oh, absolutely.
After all, investing in employees requires time and resources.
You're absolutely right. There are always objections. It's not in the budget. It won't pay off, or we can't find enough good people. Are common refrains.
Oh yeah.
But how do we move past these objections and start implementing these changes? We'll explore that in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, stay tuned. Yeah, it's easy to get stuck in that we've always done it this way mentality.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it comes to something as ingrained as how we structure work.
Right.
So how do you convince people who are really resistant to change that investing in employees is actually a smart business move?
It's about shifting the mindset. From seeing labor as a cost to be minimized, to recognizing it as an asset to be cultivated. One effective strategy is to make the status quo unacceptable.
Okay.
Highlight the competitive risks of staying stuck in that vicious cycle we talked about.
So it's about showing them that if they don't adapt, they'll get left behind.
Exactly. Show them how companies that prioritize their employees are pulling ahead in terms of customer loyalty and innovation. Hunt cites examples like Quest Diagnostics and Mudbay, where investing in good jobs led to these significant improvements in turnover, productivity, and customer satisfaction.
It's like that saying, the best investment is in the people who make the product. But I imagine some leaders might push back and say, sure, those companies can afford it, but but we're working with a tight budget.
Right. That's where the ethical argument comes in.
Okay.
More and more people want to work for companies
right.
that align with their values. Highlighting the moral imperative for good jobs can be a powerful motivator.
So appeal to their sense of fairness and purpose.
Exactly.
Make them realize that it's not just about profits.
Yeah.
But it's about creating a better world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Employees want to feel good about the work they do, and customers are increasingly choosing companies that treat their workers well.
Oh.
It's a win-win.
Totally. Ton also talks about setting and communicating targets.
Yes.
How does that fit into the picture?
Setting clear goals, like Dark McMillan did at Walmart when he announced their wage increases.
Right.
Creates accountability and demonstrates a real commitment to change.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is. But even if companies buy into the idea, where do they even begin?
Right.
It can feel overwhelming to overhaul an entire system.
You don't have to do everything at once.
Okay.
Start small and focus on subtracting workload.
Okay.
Before adding more hours, remember the focus and simplify principle.
Right.
Streamlining processes and eliminating unnecessary tasks.
Right.
Frees up time and resources.
Yeah.
Which makes the investment in higher pay less risky.
It's like decluttering your house before you start redecorating.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to create space for the new to come in.
Exactly. Think about Quest Diagnostics again. They significantly reduced call volume by simply changing how they reported normal test results.
Okay.
A small change. Yeah.
But a huge impact.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
It shows that you don't need a massive budget or a complete restructuring to start making a difference.
Right.
And don't forget to involve your frontline employees in the process.
Absolutely.
They have invaluable insights into what works and what doesn't. Tap into their expertise and empower them to be part of the solution.
Right.
So creating good jobs isn't just some idealistic notion. It's a practical, achievable goal that can benefit everyone involved.
It's about creating a more sustainable,
right,
equitable, and ultimately more successful way of doing business.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
I'm already thinking about small changes I can make in my own work to improve things. Yeah. It's inspiring to see how these companies have successfully implemented this good job strategy and reap the rewards.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Yeah. Remember, change takes time and effort. But as we've learned today, the payoff is well worth it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights into the power of good jobs.
Absolutely.
Now go out there and be the change you want to see in the workplace.